Hi guys, so welcome back for another video. I'm really excited. This video I'm going to be sharing with you my pregnancy experience, like what it was like for me, what were my first symptoms, what were the best parts, what were the hardest parts. I intended on making videos throughout my pregnancy to say like, this is what my first trimester was like and this is what my second trimester was like, but here we are, 39 weeks pregnant, 6 days away from our due date, and it's gonna all go into one video, and I'm just gonna share with you what my experience was like from the beginning. I didn't really write things down. I wish that I would have. I'm sure I'll forget some things, but I wanted to have this memory for myself, and I really enjoyed watching these videos when I was pregnant to see what other people were going through, what their experience was, so hopefully you guys will enjoy this video as well. So to start with, I found out I was pregnant when I was 4 weeks and 5 days along. I suspected that I was pregnant. My husband and I were trying to get pregnant. All of those details are in other videos. If you're interested in our infertility experience, in our journey to getting pregnant, and all the details about our pregnancy, that's all in other videos. But I found out I was pregnant at 4 weeks and 5 days. So some of the things that I experienced prior to finding out were these things. The very first thing that I noticed was breast tenderness. And this is my main PMS symptom. So this is something I experienced leading up to my period every single month. But when I was pregnant, as opposed to about to get my period, it was different in the sense that usually it happens about 4 or 5 days before I get my period. And this time it happened right after ovulation. I want to say it was like about 3 days after ovulation. So 3 days after the time of conception, essentially, was when I started experiencing breast tenderness. And I texted my friend and I said, oh my gosh, I'm already getting PMS symptoms. I'm definitely not pregnant. And I was so disappointed. And she was like, just wait, have hope, have faith, because a lot of times PMS and pregnancy symptoms are very similar. So that was the first thing I noticed. And then over the next couple of weeks, so somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks pregnant, which is from the time of conception to the time that you find out, because pregnancy is dated from the time of your last period. So technically, like when they say you're 40 weeks pregnant, you're not actually pregnant for 40 weeks, but most people don't know the exact time of conception. And so that's why they date it from the last period. So I got pregnant somewhere around that 2-week mark. I do know exactly when I got pregnant, but essentially, like, just for timing purposes, that's when I got pregnant. And so within that time to the time I found out, so it was about 2.5 weeks, I experienced the breast tenderness, like I said, first, and then I had a lot of bloating. I felt super bloated. I was like, oh my gosh, like I must have gained a lot of weight, which I did gain some weight in quarantine, but I just felt like so bloated and heavy and like blah, and my clothes are fitting snugger, so I felt that way. And then I did have a little bit of cramping the week that I expected to get my period. I never had any implantation bleeding or anything like that. Some women do experience that. I did have a little bit of cramping around that 4th week of pregnancy, right before I found out, and I thought that it was cramping like I was about to get my period. It was very, very similar. I wouldn't have been surprised if I got my period. I had bloating, breast tenderness, cramping, all the things that I would normally get before my period. So now let's talk about my experience with the first trimester. Overall, in my pregnancy, I feel so blessed. I feel like so many women have such difficult pregnancies, and I feel really, really grateful that I would not say I had a difficult pregnancy. I would say I had a really easy pregnancy. There were some hard parts of it, and I'll talk about that, but overall, I feel like I had a really easy pregnancy compared to a lot of other women that I know. The biggest things for me in the first trimester were weight gain. I started gaining weight right away, very quickly. I gained most of my weight. Most people gain weight mostly in the 3rd trimester. I gained most of my weight in the 1st trimester, but pretty evenly spread out throughout the entire pregnancy. I was so bloated. By 9 weeks pregnant, most of my clothes didn't fit me. None of my pants fit me. I had one pair of like mom jeans that were oversized and kind of slouchy that still fit me, and then I was wearing mostly dresses. So by the time I was 10 weeks pregnant, I was already wearing maternity clothes, which from my understanding is a lot sooner than a lot of other women. I also felt like I was showing by then, so I started taking bump pictures at 9 weeks pregnant, and that's really early. Most people, at least to my understanding, are not showing that early. And when I look back at it, it was like the tiniest bump ever, but to me it was significant. Like I would look in the mirror and be like, oh my gosh, I have a bump. Like this is not the way that my stomach normally looks. And then now comparing obviously being 39 weeks pregnant, my stomach is huge. It's so different than what it was in the beginning, but it was significant to me. Like, it was a clear difference. I really didn't have any morning sickness. There was 2 weeks. It was week 7 and week 8. And during those 2 weeks, I was so hungry. I needed to be eating at all times, and all I ate was carbs and fruit. And if I wasn't eating, I felt uneasy, is how I could describe it, but I would not say I felt nauseous. I never threw up my entire pregnancy. I did have a hard time swallowing pills, and even like brushing my teeth would sort of make me gag in the beginning of the pregnancy, but I didn't feel nauseous throughout the day. I never felt like, oh my gosh, I'm worried I'm gonna get sick or anything like that. I wouldn't even say that I had morning sickness at all. I would just say I felt a little bit uneasy for those 2 weeks. I needed to be eating, and then it honestly went away by the end of the 8th week. I was more tired than usual. I remember saying that I felt very tired, but I didn't have extreme fatigue. Like, I know people say that pregnancy fatigue and pregnancy tired is like a whole nother ball game and you have to take naps all day, and I don't think that I really took very many naps. Maybe I took a couple of naps during that time, like first trimester, but it wasn't anything crazy. Like, I could get through my work day fine. I wasn't exhausted. Usually we go to sleep between 10 and 11:30, I would say, and like by 8 or 9 o'clock I was really exhausted, and I would either be falling asleep on the couch or getting into bed and going to bed early. So I was more tired than usual in that sense, that I was going to bed early, but I wasn't exhausted throughout the day. I did have a few food aversions in the beginning. I was super grossed out by eggs, and I eat eggs all the time for breakfast. I could see how eggs can kind of become a gross food if you're pregnant and not really in the mood for them, but I was super averted to eggs. Didn't want to look at them, didn't want to smell them, didn't even want to be in the apartment when my husband was eating eggs, didn't want to clean the dishes from eggs. Eggs totally grossed me out. And then random good things like cookies. Love cookies, chocolate chip cookies. I just had no interest in them, and they almost kind of grossed me out too. So cookies, eggs, and veggie burgers was the other thing. Like, so random. It's not like an intense food. It's not like strong smelling or anything. I had wanted nothing to do with them. So those were the only 3 things that I had food aversions to. I had very few mood swings, I would say. I feel like my hormones have been very like under control as far as my mood goes, but there was a few tearful moments that I think are really funny, and I'll share one of them because I'm not a crier. So like, even if I'm sad, I don't usually express my sadness through crying. So when I'm crying, AJ, my husband, is like, what's going on? Like, something serious must be happening. Like, what did I do? What did somebody else do? He's like very concerned if I'm crying because I don't normally cry. So there was one day I just remember that I had asked him to help me do the laundry, and there was laundry all over the bed. I really wanted to get it folded and put away before we were leaving to go somewhere. And he was doing the dishes, or he started doing the dishes after I asked him to do laundry, and I was so angry, furious. There's like maybe a handful of times I've ever been angry with him. I don't usually get angry. I was so angry I started crying because he was doing dishes instead of helping me with the laundry, which, like, how ridiculous does that sound? Please, please. You're serving our family, taking care of our household by doing something, but because it's a different thing than I asked, and he did come help me with the laundry, it was just after he finished with the dishes, I like couldn't handle it. I started crying. I was so mad. As that was happening, like as that was my reaction, I knew how ridiculous that was, and I knew that that wouldn't be my normal reaction, and so I started laughing, but I was still crying, so I was crying and I was laughing. I had no idea how to respond to me. He was like, what emotion are you feeling? How can I help you? Like, what do you want from me? I don't know what you need. It was just very funny, and I knew it was ridiculous at the time, but that was just my hormonal reaction. So on the topic of hormones, let's talk about progesterone. So progesterone is a really important hormone in pregnancy, and also just in a woman's cycle in general. Progesterone sustains the pregnancy in the first trimester, and then the second and third trimester, progesterone is keeping the placenta healthy to sustain the baby and the pregnancy. So it's super, super important that you have good levels of progesterone. Because I use the Creighton model fertility care system, and that's something I teach and I'm very well educated on, I know that when a woman gets pregnant, the Creighton standards for progesterone are different than the typical OBGYN standards for progesterone. And that's because 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, and a lot of times that happens really early on in the pregnancy, before the woman even goes for her first ultrasound at week 7 or 8. And a lot of times that has to do with progesterone levels. So as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I went to my naprotechnology doctor, which is someone who's trained in Creighton. She tested my progesterone levels. They were borderline at that point. I went back for follow-up testing the following week when I was 5 weeks and some amount of days pregnant, and they had dropped significantly. Progesterone is supposed to be rising throughout pregnancy. The fact that mine dropped significantly in that 4 to 5 week range of pregnancy was not a good sign and could have been a reason that I would have had a miscarriage if it wasn't being managed closely so early on in pregnancy. Usually you don't see a doctor until you're 7 or 8 weeks pregnant. So I wasn't seeing my OB until later on, but because I was working with her and she was monitoring my progesterone levels, I started receiving progesterone support. Basically, throughout my pregnancy, from week 5 all the way until week 35, I was doing progesterone injections, and they were in my hips, and I would do alternating hips. At the beginning, I was doing it every Monday and Thursday, and then my levels were looking even lower than they should have been, so then I was doing it every 3 days. Then at another point, because the farther you get into your pregnancy, the higher your levels are supposed to be, mine were staying very, very, very low. So in addition to the shots I was doing so often, then I started doing vaginal suppositories of progesterone twice a day. The suppositories were fine. They're a little annoying because you do have discharge because of them, but the shots were what really I struggled with. Sometimes it was fine and sometimes I wouldn't feel any pain, but sometimes my hips would be so swollen, so inflamed, so sore that I would be limping when I would walk, and like really, really bad limping. That was really hard. That was honestly the one and only hard thing that I experienced throughout my pregnancy was the effects of the progesterone injections. I stopped at week 35. I would have continued because my levels were still very low. If you don't continue and your levels are still low or they drop, it's possible to have an early miscarriage or to go into labor prematurely and deliver the baby sooner than you would want to. So I tried to continue them as long as possible, but by 35 weeks, I knew I could give birth. My baby would be healthy because it's far enough along. And I was in so much pain. I was so miserable. I called my doctor crying on her emergency line at like 8 p.m. after I got a shot one day when I was 35 weeks along. And I was like, I can't move. Like, I'm in so much pain. Can't move. My whole body's hurting. And so she was like, okay, so your body's not tolerating it anymore. So it's safe to stop at this point because although your body needs it, it's okay if you go into labor at this point. Like, your baby is going to live and not going to have serious complications from being born too early. So I stopped them at week 35. I've continued the vaginal suppositories and he's still very cozy in there. So thank God that everything's been fine since I stopped, but that was my experience with progesterone throughout the pregnancy. In my second trimester, I had some heartburn / acid reflux. I don't know exactly the difference or if there is one, but like especially when I would lay down in bed at night, super, super burning, like right here in the center of my chest. It was crazy intense feeling when I was having it, but it didn't happen so much. Like it maybe happened 10 times throughout my entire pregnancy. So it wasn't something I was constantly struggling with and dealing with. Sometimes just when I would lay down at night, if I had dinner later or ate spicy food or ate really acidic food, then I would notice it. And I would just sit up, drink some water, and it would go away not too long after that. So I didn't deal with it horribly, but I did have that a little bit. Something I noticed about halfway through my pregnancy, I noticed finally like, well, I don't really cry very much. Like there was maybe 3 or 4 times that I cried over something very silly. But I did notice kind of the opposite where I was hysterical, like laughing hysterically to the point of tears, crying because I'm laughing so hard, can't breathe because I'm laughing so hard. And that is very unlike me. I find things funny, but in the same way that like when I'm sad, it doesn't express through tears, it doesn't express through crying. When I find something funny, like I don't typically laugh hysterically. That's just not my personality. And I've found myself hysterical so many times. And even to the point, like sometimes in the pregnancy, I'll just like look at AJ and just start cracking up for no reason. Like I wasn't thinking of something funny. He didn't do something funny. Nothing happened. And I'm just hysterical to the point of tears. And then he's laughing because he doesn't know what's going on. And it's been so fun. That's my favorite part of pregnancy. And I hope it never goes away because it's so fun. In October, so I got pregnant at the end of July. I'm due April 21st and in October. So I was 3 months pregnant. And that's when my ankles and feet started swelling. And 3 months is really early. I was a little concerned. I was like, do I have a blood clot? Like, what's going on? This doesn't seem normal. Like, I know when you're 9 months pregnant, your ankles swell, but like when you're 3 months pregnant, is that normal? And the doctor said yes. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have any other concerning signs or symptoms or anything. And so I was just someone who had very swollen feet and ankles. I truly have not seen my ankles since October. They're still extremely swollen. I wear compression socks like every single day, try to elevate my feet, try to drink a lot of water, but I'm just someone who gets swollen ankles and swollen feet. So that started in October and has been interesting. When I was 21 weeks along, that's when I felt him move, our baby move for the first time. And at first I didn't know if it was really him moving because it felt just like such little thuds. And everybody would say, oh, it feels like little flutters. And I didn't feel flutters. I felt like tiny little thuds, or almost like if you're on a roller coaster and your stomach drops, almost like that feeling, but like really tiny, just like a tiny little feeling. And it was below my belly button. It was pretty low. And I was just like, I don't know what it feels like to have a baby move inside of you. I don't know if that's what it feels like. And so for the first few days I wasn't sure, but then after, it was like a very consistent feeling for multiple days in a row, and it was most often when I would lay down to go to sleep at night, then I knew that it was him moving, and I got more confident that it was him moving, which was such a fun feeling. I started being able to feel him having hiccups inside of me, and then it took like a couple more weeks for AJ and other people to be able to feel him move from the outside, but I started feeling him at 21 weeks. Then right around that time too, I think it was the 20th week of pregnancy, a lot was going on during that halfway mark, lots of changes. I started getting lower back pain, and it was like pretty bad. I would stand up or move my leg in a certain way, and I would just feel like I would just get stuck, or I would just not be able to move very well, and it would be like a sharp pain in my lower back. And that's when I decided to go see a chiropractor, which I am so grateful for. That was like the best decision that I made, one of the best decisions that I made to care for myself throughout the pregnancy. I was like, I really think that it's important for me to invest in this, and I started seeing a chiropractor once a week from my 20th week, and truly, I think that has made such a big difference, because anytime I have lower back pain, upper back pain, or pelvic pain, those are really the only things that I've had like mildly. Whenever I have them and I go to the chiropractor, it either completely goes away or significantly decreases the amount of pain and discomfort that I'm feeling. So I have really benefited from the chiropractor. And even now, I know that like so many women are so uncomfortable at the end of their pregnancies, and I feel really good. Like I feel just as good as I normally do. I have energy. I can walk miles and miles every day. I go for really long walks in the morning. I feel really good, and I really think that it's because I've been receiving continual chiropractic care throughout the pregnancy. In my third trimester, I started noticing stretch marks. And this is so funny because I have never had stretch marks in my life before, and I thought I knew what stretch marks looked like, but I guess I had stretch marks for quite a bit of time before I even realized that they were stretch marks. I thought they were veins because I have red stretch marks, and my doctor pointed it out. She was like, oh, I noticed you have stretch marks, when she was doing the progesterone injections on my hip. It was in that area. So I don't know if the progesterone injections brought on more stretch marks, or if it was just because my body's been expanding to make room for this baby, and so that's why I have stretch marks. Either way, they don't bother me. I actually found it really funny because I thought they were veins, and I was like, why do I have so many veins on my hip? And I guess it's from the progesterone injections. But she was like, well, yeah, I see veins and stretch marks. And I was like, oh. I don't know, I just didn't realize they were stretch marks. So I do have quite a bit of stretch marks on my right hip, and then a little bit on my left hip, but not too much. It's much more on my right hip for some reason. And then I have noticed a little bit, like just a couple of stretch marks on one of my breasts recently, just in the past week or two. I noticed some stretch marks on one of my inner thighs. That's my interesting stretch mark experience. I feel like it's funny, and I feel like a lot of women struggle with stretch marks, but to me, when I saw the ones on my inner thigh, I was like, oh my gosh, cool, like I got a new stretch mark. To me, it's just really amazing the way that our bodies make room for new life, and so I am not going to be concerned about a stretch mark that is a result of my body literally creating and sustaining human life, which is so incredible to me. I mentioned the chiropractor helping with pelvic pain. That's something also, it's just been the past couple weeks, I would say from about like 35 weeks pregnant, I started feeling some pressure in my pelvis. I think just because the baby has gotten lower and things like that, or maybe things have been misaligned a little bit. But again, the chiropractor has been so helpful with making sure that that's not really been an issue. Like I do feel it, but it doesn't concern me. It doesn't stop me from being able to walk around, move around, things like that. Oh, something that's funny that just made me think of, because I mostly feel it at night. night is when I roll over in the middle of the night, I literally feel like a beached whale that is trying to roll over. Like, it's such a process, and I have to move, like, roll from one side to the other multiple times a night. I don't have trouble sleeping, thank God. I sleep really well, but I do have to wake up multiple times a night, either to go to the bathroom or just to roll over from one side to the other to get comfortable again. And it's such a process. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I really need to roll over because I'm not comfortable anymore. Okay, and then I like throw my leg over, throw my arm over, throw my other leg over, bring my belly over. Like, it's just a funny process, and I'm like grunting and groaning the whole time. And then yeah, getting up to go to the bathroom at night is something new. I have never been someone who has to get up and pee in the middle of the night before pregnancy, and now I do every single night, most of the time at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's so annoying. I wake up and I'm like, do I really have to? Do I really have to pee? Can I wait until the morning? But no, you can't wait until the morning. You have to get up and go to the bathroom. That's not fun, but it's okay. So yeah, that's pretty much been my experience throughout the whole pregnancy. Overall, I feel like it's been amazing. I feel so grateful for every single second of it. Truly, the hardest part was the progesterone injections, which is most people don't get them. I feel really grateful for them because I know they helped my pregnancy stay healthy. They helped me be healthy. They helped the baby stay healthy. So I feel super grateful for them. I would never have changed that experience, but it was very hard. I was in a lot of pain. I was limping a lot of nights, just so uncomfortable. So very grateful, but very difficult. That was the hardest part of the pregnancy for me. The best parts of the pregnancy was gaining this new hysterical laughing situation from my hormones and feeling him move within me. Those were definitely the two best parts of the pregnancy so far. One last thing I didn't talk about because I didn't experience it was cravings. So I really never had food cravings or any cravings throughout my pregnancy until like the 3rd trimester. There was one day that I just would have died for Girl Scout cookies. I really wanted Samoas, the ones with like coconut and caramel and chocolate. Literally would have died for them. I asked on Instagram, like, where can I randomly get Girl Scout cookies? And thankfully everyone on Instagram is so helpful and nice and told me that all the grocery stores have a knockoff brand of that cookie, and so I've been buying them ever since. But that was like the one thing, the one craving that I ever had throughout pregnancy was just those cookies. So that's it. That's been my pregnancy experience. That has been the walk and look into my different trimesters and how my body has changed. Oh, I guess like about the body changing situation, I have gained about 40 pounds. My OBs, their response to weight gain the whole time has been very much like, you're healthy, you're eating well, your vitals look good, blood pressure looks good, the baby is healthy, you're healthy, so the amount of nutrients you're getting is much more important than the amount of weight you're gaining or not gaining. So they never had any concerns about it, which I was really grateful for. I feel healthy. I've been going for walks, miles every day. And yeah, so I gained about 40 pounds and the baby is currently measuring about 8 pounds and 10 ounces. So he's big. My body has changed a lot, expanded a lot. And again, I'm like so grateful for that. My view, especially because we struggled to get pregnant, but my view regardless the whole time has just been like, it is such a miracle and such a gift to be able to create, grow, and sustain human life that my body, I will allow it to do whatever it needs to do in order to make that happen. That's been my experience. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did like it, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will share a new video very soon. See you then. Bye.